with the poetry, you're making the head jump and you're rating it for linguistics. Like I've got Irish blood, so I go, the Blarney's running. Like all of a sudden, linguistically, there's a lot of alliteration in my thought patterns. You sit down, it's a good time to address a melody that you're working on or something, because it's like the Grunion are running, the Blarney's running, but it's a jumpy head, and you're going good, better, best, you're evaluating, right? With painting, the head process is completely different.
Remove the thoughts?
It's like meditation. You come down to synapses, red in the upper left-hand corner, so it's
what was that? What's going on? What was that?
It's just the ohm, it's just the universe,
Is that
the hum
inside
of the
your head?
wires or whatever. It just comes down to synapses, non-verbal. The discourse has been silenced.
Right.
So it's a very different headspace from poetry.
Is poetry more, and therefore lyrics and music, more cerebral?
Well, what would you say?
Well,
you got a busy head.
I guess so.
And
I would say that's what. Yeah.
You're watching it you're watching your busy head, right, from a detached point of view, and you're stealing from it. Ooh, good thought, bad thought. Oh, colorful, not quite to the point. Like you would peel some more layers off the end. That's the way I write. That's not the way everybody writes, but but it's an active brain, and the analytical process is in play. In the painting, the analytical process appears from time to time as a command. Red in the upper left-hand corner, nose too fat, like whatever,
Nose too fat.
Nose too fat.
Nose too fat.
Upper lip too thin, like, So it's more like
sounds like the robot from Star Trek.
It's more like a contemplate or a meditative. It's more like a Zen mind painting, whereas writing is more from a Buddhist position, more neurotic. You're raiding Mishigas, basically. You're the chaos of the contemplative eye thing dishes up.
The through line is your drawing. You're a visual artist. You go from Saskatoon, you attend art school in Calgary for visual arts, right? For painting. You were painting.
Right.
You start also playing in some cafes in Saskatoon musically, then you end up in Toronto. How did music become the career?
Because I got pregnant. I was the only virgin in art school, right? You've been holding on to this precious thing, and I just kind of stupidly let it go.
One weekend in Toronto.
As Jean, my choreographer, says, you were bamfed. No, it was in Banff.
It was in Banff.
Right, you were bamfed, and so I got caught out immediately, and so I had to create a smokescreen. The music was not of interest. This is a trick that fate, because I didn't know I had the gift. I hadn't started to write. I was just a folk singer.
And how did music become the smokescreen rather than painting?
Well, because I'm going to quit art school. The pretense to protect my parents was that, I was having trouble with the profs. I was in debate with them all the time. They didn't like the way I dressed. Again, you had to go into a box. To be a painter, you had to wear there was a uniform. It didn't allow for individuality. And they were prejudiced against people with hand-to-eye coordination. They were all abstractionists, and I didn't care for that pocket of painting.
Even in art school, there were too many rules for you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was total conformity. And I was an honor student there, and I've talked to other students later that even though they were hard on me and always on me, that they used my work as examples. Well, I guess because I became famous that they used it. But I was an honor student, but I was docked because I'm no good at mornings, and I would go to Edmonton and sing on the weekends, come home tired and miss Monday morning. So tardiness, which should not have come into play for an artist, a real artist anyway, was the reason that they were going to dock me, was for absenteeism. I said, well, why? I got my work in, I just didn't get it in by the clock exactly, you know.
So music becomes the smokescreen. You go to Toronto, and by the way, of course, you have the child. You put the child up for adoption. You find your daughter many years later, and we've heard some of that.
But let's clear up something that people
Please.
assume erroneously, and I see it written again and again and again, that that I gave up my daughter to further my career. This is so wrong. There was no career. My music at that point, first of all, I was just a folk singer. You know, it was just, there was no ambition. There was no, you know, I had a nice voice, I guess. I played okay, you know, but there was no real gift that, you know, it was just something that was happening and was going to die out soon, you know. It was a way to get money to smoke, you know, and to have a pizza and go to a movie and to bowl, because that's what I did at art school too. I came in there with no frills, you know. I had to earn half my fare at art school because my parents disapproved, and there was nothing left over. So singing in the clubs was fun, and it afforded me a little bit of income that I wouldn't have had.
Joni, when did you know it was more than fun? That you actually did. You were more
When I
than
made
just
a
a
bad
folk singer.
marriage. When I married Chuck Mitchell, you know, I should have been a runaway bride on our wedding day. You know, even his mother said, you know, of him, that he was referred to him as the first waffle, and said it should be used to warm up the pan and then thrown out. He behaved so selfishly on his wedding day. If I'd known about runaway brides, I would have, you know. So it didn't last very long. And like they say, if you make a good marriage, God bless you. If you make a bad marriage, become a philosopher. So, you know, Both Sides Now and all of those songs that came out of that were, you know, to get away from him, I would go down to the Toddle House. We lived in the black neighborhood there, you know, and I would sit there and drink coffee and write. And so the writing began to happen. You know, he tried to gain ownership of it. He set up a publishing company. I had him set up too, because I knew I had to get out of that marriage, you know. But the thing that keeps getting written is that I gave up my daughter in order to further my career. This is just not so. What was done at that time was you didn't even see the daughter. You didn't have the right thing to do to protect your parents was to get out of town, go into a home. Well, in '65, the homes were full. So many girls got cut out because everything was changing. Movies were getting sexier. It was very confusing to be a young woman there. What's right? You know, everything was changing. And the pill was not available. So there were a lot of unwed children born in 1965, more than could be adopted, and all the homes were full, you know. So it was very difficult to survive. I mean, at the time I had her, I was destitute, you know, and if there was no way I could take her out of the hospital into a blizzard with no job, no roof over my head. There was no way I could take her. And there weren't even foster homes available at that time because there was such a glut of unwed children. But she was beautiful, and she found her way into a foster home. And I tried to get work and get a setup that I could bring her to. Well, in that time period, I couldn't get any work in Toronto because I couldn't get $160 to get into the union. You know, I was beset by predators, you know, like people trying to take advantage of the situation. I won't name names, but a lot of human ugliness came at me because I was in a white slavers. I mean, you wouldn't believe the gauntlet you have to run when you're young, destitute, and in a situation like that. They tortured me in Toronto General. They literally tortured me, you know, in there, you know, out of disrespect. You know, 30 years later, when my granddaughter was born in the same hospital, it wasn't the same hospital, but it was the dark ages then for women. You know, I was a criminal. I was a fallen woman. It was, you know, it was a very difficult situation. So things changed, things improved. The Christians would have us go backwards, you know, in their lack of compassion, in their ignorance, and in their desire to increase the folds, like the Catholics kept the birth control thing going. It's kind of the same roots. It all comes down to money, not compassion, really, you know, the driving wheel behind it. So, you know, am I getting too heavy?
No, I'm glad you cleared that up. I'm glad you cleared that up. But I do want to ask you, But
I did not give, I had no career. They don't understand. At the time I gave her up, I had no career.
So when does the career...
And I had no ambition to be a musician because there was no reason. I mean, The bottom was falling out of folk music. My only thing was, this is the last time I'm ever going to be able, with a grade 12 education, get enough money in the bank.
There'll be crocuses to bring to school tomorrow. Just a little green, like the nights when northern lights perform. There will be icicles and birthday clothes, and sometimes there'll be sorrow.
When you really, can you pinpoint a time, whether it was writing a song or playing a gig or something, when you realized that this was going to be a career for you? This had
There was no such
had real
time.
potential.
No, there wasn't. You know, as David said, Joan, you're the only person I know, you know, who doesn't want to be famous. I really didn't. I wrote a poem about
Which
it.
David Crosby?
Geffen.
Geffen.
You know, I thought fame was going to be a horrible experience, which until you get used to it, it is. You know, you just have to deal with an incredible amount of stupidity because this place is mentally ill with celebrity. So you have to see a lot of mental illness, you know, coming at you. You know, like, and you go, oh my God, this culture is so sick. I'll tell you what, at 16, this will give you an idea. I'm not a kid that played air guitar in the bedroom and go, oh, I'm going to be rich and famous and all of that.
Right.
I felt sorry for stars. You know, Sandra Dee was all over the local magazines with her mascara running down. The paparazzi were on them. She was breaking up with her husband. It was misery. I thought, oh, the poor woman. What if they did that to me in the school newspaper? You know, that's what empathy is. You know, you can identify,
Yes.
you know, with what you think is so big over there with what is, you know, you can identify. So I had to write in blank verse on assignment. And I was getting my hair done for some beauty contest at the hair school by amateurs. And there were these stacks of these magazines with Sandra Dee crying on the cover. And so I wrote this poem called The Fishbowl about Hollywood before I ever was here. You know, the fishbowl is a world reverse where fishermen with hooks that dangle from the bottom up reel down their catch without a fight on gilded bait. Pike, pickerel, bass, the common fish ogle through distorting glass. See only glitter, glamour, gaiety. Fog up the bowl with lusty breath. Lunge towards the bait and miss and weep for fortunes lost. Envy the goldfish? Why? His bubbles breaking round the rim while silly fishes faint for him and say, oh my God, I think he winked at me. So you see.
When did you write that?
When I was 16.
Wow.
So before I went to art school, before I got into this game, you know, so I'm not entering the game in a normal way.
Also, you see yourself as an outsider at that time as well, right? You see yourself as different from...
Oh, yeah. Well, people tell me I'm
you're
from
not,
Mars all
not
the
mainstream.
time. No, I'm from Mars. How many times have I been told that?
But you also believe that to a certain extent.
What, that I'm from Mars?
Not
No, I
that you're
don't.
necessarily from Mars, but that
I'm sick all the time.
You've always felt like you were outside of the mainstream.
I am. I'm lying in hospitals trying not to die. I'm not a herd animal. Yeah, so I am outside. I'm born the day of the discoverer, the week of depth. So I'm cursed by astrology to be deeper than the average person and also have the need to be original, to plant the flag where no one else has been. So I'm going to listen to traditions which satisfy everybody and sell like hotcakes and go, that ain't shit. You know, it's been done and done and done.
So how does it feel like when that person becomes, as you did by the early 70s, this massive star? Having said all you did about fame.
I retreated into the BC wilderness.
Yeah.
You know, I hated it. Hated it. The fishbowl is a world reversed. Pike, pickerel, bass.
Meaning all of it? I mean, to the point where you look back at those times and go, that sucks.
That attention to celebrity is mental illness. You know, the mental illness that creates that attention is tragic to me.
What about the fact that just tons of people were buying your records?
Well, that's different. And that's different. And the people that feel the music, and the trick is, if you listen to that music and you see me, you're not getting anything out of it. If you listen to that music and you see yourself, It'll probably make you cry, and you'll learn something about yourself, and now you're getting something out of it, you know? And those are the people, those are the people, you know, that my communication is complete. Most of them, they know I'm famous, they know I'm this, but there's no real communication. It's just a phenomenon there, you know, and people will flick their bick at anything. You know what I mean? It's no big deal.
He was playing real free. All for freedom.
I'm just thinking to this point of like you really having a difficult time with how popular you were becoming, how famous you were becoming.
No, wait,
how
I'm not
influential.
having let's just, when I realized how popular I was becoming, it was right before Blue, and I went,
Yeah.
oh my God, a lot of people are listening to me. Well, then they better find out who they're worshiping. Let's see if they can take it. Let's get real. So I wrote Blue, which horrified a lot of people, you know, and then it created a lot of attention that was really weird. And so then I bought a property in British Columbia and dropped out, because what had happened is they're looking at me, and all I've done is reveal human traits. They haven't seen themselves in it. At the point that they see themselves in it, the communication is complete. At the point where they're looking after me, it's like pigs to blood, you know, it's like Marilyn Monroe on a tightrope or something.
Blue is
like
considered a classic. How so? That
Now?
people, but at the time,
No.
people
that.
thought.
Horrified.
Well, how were they horrified? Why were they horrified?
Well, the men, because it was a men's world. Chris Christopherson went, Joni, you know, keep something of yourself. Johnny Cash said, the world is on your shoulders. They all recoiled because the game was, I'm bad, even though it was before that. The game is to make yourself larger than life. Don't reveal anything human. And my thing is, why? You know, movies do it. You know, okay, it hasn't been done in the song. Why do we have to, you know, Bergman did it, you know, in film. It's been done in film. So, you know, but the trouble is, I'm the playwright, I'm the actress, you know, and I want them to look at the play and see past it, but all of it, it's such an intimate art form, and I'm doing so much of it that all the attention is going to me, which is insane. From my point of view, it's like, you're not going to get anything out of it if you look at me. You know, you got to see yourself in it. Otherwise, it has no value.
Oh, you are in my blood like holy wine. You taste so bitter, darling, and so, so sweet. Oh, I could drink a case of you, darling. Still I'd be on my feet. I would still be on my feet.
You own your talents. You're willing to accept having an ego and saying, I'm good at, you know, I did well on this. This sounds good. I'm good at this. And on that note,
Everyone has an ego.
do you
You
feel like
cannot say, I like this tomato soup without an ego. The ego is the original sin, you know?
do you feel like too many artists engage in false humility?
Yes, it's disgusting. I'd rather have real arrogance than false humility. I mean, that's, you know, when somebody pays me, the few compliments that I've really enjoyed, you know, that I've been received, you know, they humble me. They're heartwarming because a real connection has been made. We have met, you know. I've put out a signal and this person has picked it up, right? And we're meeting like this. It's not like they got me on a pedestal or they're looking down on me because I'm not their favorite or whatever. We meet. And so that's a communication.
Why do you think why do you think there's this notion, why do you think those artists engage in false humility? Why do you think
Because it's fashionable and it's good. It's politics.
to be humble?
Yeah, it's you know, it's baby kissing. It's politics. You know, and it's also Christian training. you know, and this is basically a Christian. Well, I guess it's not Christian. You know, it's considered appropriate conduct, so therefore that conduct is emulated.
Right.
You know.
And you prefer them to say, I'm really good at this.
Who?
Yeah. I don't know. An artist that...
Well, it depends. If they're going around, no, because there's a thing about academics where they're encouraged to boast, and they can stand and run their credentials for 2 hours ad nauseum. I'm not advocating that, you know. But I know what my standards are, and every time I met them, I raised them a little bit more. There are still things that I look up to, not as much as when I was young, you know, but there are still things like, oh, thank God, that I can still be amazed by, you know, Debussy, Duke Ellington, you know, not a lot, but there's still some things that I could learn from.
It's a small town, big man, fresh lipstick glistening, sophomore jive from victims of typewriters. The band sounds like typewriters.
Is it realistic, Joni, for a contemporary music artist to not be a copycat of some sort?
Yes, I'm not a copycat. What am I? You know, I'm pretty original. You know, and
Well, what about a new artist today? I mean, it just.
I left
isn't
a lot of
everyone
half-baked ideas in my work for people to come and finish.
Where's the line? Where's the line between paying?
I just haven't. I'm not saying be like me, please. You know, I'm
Okay.
not trying to start a school. People that have tried to start into my school, I went, oh, woe be to the imitators. Like, if you're going to pile up those many words, Paul Simon tried it, and I went, yikes, and I stopped
Right,
doing
right.
it. You know, like I go, you know, this should not be a school. This is just painter's principles that I'm trying to apply. Don't take that direction. I'm not sure I succeeded with it. It's kind of sounds goofy when I hear it
But
coming
where's
back.
where's the line between learning lessons from our predecessors, our musical heroes, and being a copycat?
Well, tradition is a copycat, and most people love tradition. I'm not saying, you know, like, that's what sells. So please, you know, what I need, I'm not proselytizing what I need. I need, because of my birthday, to discover. Not everybody has that birthday or that need, you know, and most people are perfectly content, and 99.9% of the musicians sat in their room, picked a hero, and emulated it, and tried to cop that sound or that this or that, you know. That's not my approach.
Right.
I approached it like a painter with a painter's need to be an original, and that's not a normal need in music, nor am I saying be like me. I'm not, you know. It means you end up, I'm a mutt, you know. I belong to nothing. There's a great liberty in that, and I'm a freedom freak. But there are times when you wish, you know, when you have no one on your side.
But when you
don't
talk
belong
about
to
someone like
anything.
in 2010 about Dylan, when you have Bob Dylan, you say he's not authentic at all. He's a plagiarist. His name and voice.
Oh, wait, I didn't say that. I didn't say
No.
that he's not authentic at all. That is not a word I use. No, see,
That was
that's
from the LA Times.
Yes,
So
okay, that's journalistic bullshit, you know. And, you know, he told me I haven't written a song in years. I said, well, what are you talking about? You know, who's writing them then? He said the box. He just jots down. He came down to craft. You know, inspiration doesn't stay with a lot of artists very long. It's very brief, and then you're in the game, and you got to keep it sustaining it with something, right? You know, you notice it, like One Trick Wonders, you know, 2 good albums and then they peter out. You know, to sustain a gift for a long time is very rare.
does that make you disappointed in him? Or
And Dylan?
yeah.
No, and that remark is completely out of context. The interviewer was an, you know, I went into that thing about the actor, the thing that we've been through here,
Yeah,
and he
yeah,
accused me of being unauthentic. Now that's just ignorance. So I'm talking to a guy, how do I explain to this moron whose IQ is somewhere between his shoe size and his knees, and he's misconstruing everything I say. I'm doing this for John Kelly, who's impersonating me. I hate doing interviews with stupid people. This guy's a moron, you know, and I said, and then I got philosophical. Philosophical? I said, yes, philosophical, you know. I said, you do know what philosophy is, don't you? you know, so everything I said, he's calling into question. I can't talk to an adult like that without getting aggravated. They call us exploding morgies. Our nerves are all wrapped around by fibrous things and everything, you know. Our nerves are worn thin, you know. We do not want to talk to stupid people, you know, anyone with this disease.
How am I doing?
We're doing fine.
Okay.
I do get intense though sometimes. But that's the problem. Let's get off the Bob
let's get off the
Dylan.
Dylan. I will ask him he is of your like there's a generation there, and you talked about Leonard and Bob before.
I like a lot of Bob's songs. Musically, he's not very gifted. You know, he's borrowed his voice from old hillbillies. He's got a lot of borrowed things. He's not a great guitar player. You know, he's invented a character to deliver his songs. Sometimes I wish that I could have that character. You know, because, you know, you can do things with that character, you know. It's a mask of sorts, you know, so... Still I remember every face of every man but you. I see my life outside.
Let me ask you a bit about the Joni Mitchell image that is projected onto you.
Which one?
I guess there's a couple of... First of all, you've always had a distaste for being referred to as a confessional songwriter, right?
Yeah, that's
Why?
like
Tell us why.
swinging light and billy clubs. You will confess. You know, it's like, what did I confess to? I'm selfish. Mine is the most selfish generation, you know, in history, right? What is so confessional? I'm sad? Oh, geez, you know, have you never been sad? You know, I mean, I guess my biggest secret was that I was an unwed mother, but when that came out, my God, there were so many of us over time. Even from my mother's generation, women came forward that got cut out, you know, and it was kind of liberating when my daughter and I were reunited. It was a good news story for many people, you know, that I wasn't run out of town on the rails or something for being a bad girl.
So back to, so if songwriting isn't confessional, then it's storytelling, and you are the actress or the director?
I'm all of those things. Many Had a Joan, you know, like I'm the playwright, like Tennessee Williams, right? You know, then I have to perform the text, which takes sense memory, like a method actor, right? And sometimes I'm critical. Oh, why did I read that line like that? It's to this or to that. You know, I'm critical of my performance as a purveyor of words. Why did, you know, now I would read that word bon, you know, like to get more,
right.
I put the emphasis on the wrong syllable or whatever, you know, like why didn't I catch that? Because I'm my own producer. So I'm using my own judgment when the performance is right. And a lot of them hold up over time, you know, and some of them, that was the pinnacle of where, you know, I grew after that.
But if you're method acting...
well, all singers are. All singers are.
So you're saying that if someone writes a song, if Adele writes a song and she's singing it, and it's about a breakup she's had, she's acting?
Of course. She's not breaking up at that moment. You know, it may be her own experience.
She's reliving the emotions.
She's reliving it. That's
right.
Method acting. You know?
But when you say an actress and director, then it suggests that it's something ersatz. That's not you then. It's a role you're playing.
No. Method acting is being you. You know, it's drawing on all your sense memory and everything. It's very real. But of course, it's art. And art is short for artificial. So the art of art is to be as real as you can within this artificial situation. That's what it's all about. Right? You know, and that's what art is. You know, and you can make it like Van Gogh's paintings are exaggerated to make the emotional experience of these landscapes realer for the deadened. You know, it's not really that blue, the sky, and the stars aren't really that big. But, you know, you're not seeing them, so he's going to blow them up. So in a way, it's a lie to get you to see the truth.
Is it ever just entirely fiction? Not, I mean, when you're writing? Or is it always method acting? You know, Kate Bush says, I don't write about myself at all, I write about...
Well, I am Lakota, for instance. I'm not Lakota, but it's written with a lot of empathy. And I sing it with enough authenticity that the Lakota Sioux had me march as a dignitary with their chiefs and they're medicine men, all men. The women were kind of upset about it. A white woman marching, a blonde yet, you know. Custer was a blonde. All their enemies were blondes, you know. So, you know, with enough authenticity to be invited to march with them as an equal and a dignitary. So, but there were people within the reservations that we marched with that looked at me with suspicion as an outsider. No matter how authentic, you know, I am not Lakota, but I was able to state their case as articulately.
It always comes from inside you.
Right. So it's real, but it's art.
But it's not confessional. I'm getting the lexicon together here. I'm making sure.
Well, confession in this culture is usually, it's either in church and it's a sin, or it's you know, is being whipped out of you in the police station. Right. You know, I just find, you know, or it's the confessions of the first person to write in first person in any language, I believe, was St. Augustine, who wrote volumes of I to his God, right? You know, that was the first person to write that personally, I think, in literature anywhere, you know, and it was called the Confessions of St. Augustine, so that comes in, you know. But they lump me in with Plath and Sexton, who frankly, you know, to me, Plath is morbid and Sexton is a liar. She's not really telling the truth most of the time. She lied to her psychiatrist. You know, I don't like being on that list with those women. You know, I don't think they're as honest as I am.
Well, let me ask you about something else you get lumped in with. There continues to be the pervading image of Joni Mitchell, the winsome blonde with the guitar, the hippie folk goddess. How do you feel about that? Your sometime alter ego?
A hippie folk goddess. Well, we need goddesses, but I don't want to be one. You know, hippie. The only hippie thing that I like the fashion show and I like the Rainbow Coalition, you know, but most of the hippie values were silly to me, you know, and free love, come on, you know, it's a ruse for guys, you know, it's just, you know, there's no such thing. And if you, like I did, okay, I say, you know, let's see, look at the rep I got, you know, there was a list of people whose path I crossed. It wasn't even, you know, in the summer of love, they made me into this love bandit, right? You know, in the summer of love, so much for free love. Nobody knows more than me what a ruse that was. So, you know, that was a thing for guys. It was a ruse for, you know, for guys, you know, coming out of prohibition, you know, it's hard to get laid before that, right? So, hippie goddess, like, again, if you elevate me, you're not going to meet yourself in my songs, you know. Well, maybe you can do, I don't know, I don't think so.
You basically don't like being pigeonholed.
Exactly.
Mitchell,
no,
right?
I'm fluid, you know, and yeah.
Water in the bathroom sink, fever and the scum brown bowl. Blue still begging, but you know it's indistinct. Someone's high-fi drum and jelly roll.
You're such a singular, you're such a unique and individual artist. Who have you seen as your contemporaries?
Didn't have any. I mean, Leonard and Bob were the only peer group, you mean? I didn't really have a peer group. Maybe in the beginning, you know, when I was first starting out, everything sounds good to you when you're young and all your friends, oh geez, we're all making songs. But it was much more competitive, I felt, than it needed to be. You know, there was a lot of short sheeting and, you know, breaking your guitar and, you know, especially for a girl, I'm too good for a girl, right? So there's a lot of resentment for that, you know.
But I mean, so Leonard and Dylan are
We're
peer
writers.
group, but they're not, you don't consider them
Not musically.
not musical contemporaries.
No.
You can't, there's no one.
Duke, people, you know, I mean, that I look up to, Stravinsky, Duke Ellington, for daring and individuality, Debussy.
But they're not even the same era as you.
Well, no, that wasn't much in.
Guess it's based on what each set of time and change is touching. Guess it's based on what each set of time and change is touching. Guess it's based on what each set of time and change is touching. Guess it's based on what each set of time and change is touching.
You're working on a memoir. You're working on a book of poetry.
No.
No, there isn't some poetry you're working
There's
on.
a book that came out of my songs, just came out, called Gathered Light, where, you know, again, I've been kicked out of every school of music that there is, you know, and also I've been kind of withheld as a poet because I sang it, right? So, whereas Leonard is considered a poet, you know, and Dylan is considered, and even Jim Morrison, God knows why, is considered a poet. But
Because he called himself a poet.
maybe, but they go, well, she thinks she's a poet, or but she was the most poetic among them, or something. So there's always this perverse withholding of this thing. So a book came out that promised to it's all full of poets. It promised inclusion. Some of them are nice, but for the most part, I realize I never liked poetry. So whatever it is that I do, to me, poetry, Nietzsche on the poets was very accurate, you know. Did you ever read Zarathustra, Zarathustra?
No.
Zarathustra? The poet, well, here's kind of in a nutshell. The poet is the vainest of the vain. Even before the ugliest of water buffalo doth he fan his tail. I've looked among them for an honest man, and all I've dredged up are old God's heads, old God's heads. Here's a good one. He muddies his waters that he might appear deep. Well, so the academic poets in this book, they're digging under my lines, like looking for hidden meaning and slapping themselves on the back going, I think I'm onto something here. So poetry is obviously mistaught at the level of higher education. It was mistaught in the school system, you know, and to me it was like eating sunflower seeds with your fingertips, you know, for all that effort to crack this thing, you get this piddly little nugget, you know, like, I mean, and Nietzsche felt like that about it, you know, and even Shakespeare, who I love, like soliloquies and stuff, they're rich, you know, regardless of whether he stole it or where he collected, he rounded up great thought and did it in a very artful way, you know. But his sonnets, I can smell the money in them. Like he's got, I don't know how many sonnets about, you're so beautiful that you should reproduce yourself and I'm the guy to do it. You know, and I think, okay, he wrote one. Some guy said, I'm hustling this girl. Would you write me one like you wrote for John?
Even Shakespeare's a copycat.
Yeah, I mean, oh, you did that for money, Willie, and you did that for money, you know.
Don't it always seem to go? You don't know what you've got till it's gone. They paved paradise, put up a parking lot. They paved paradise, put up a parking lot. They paved paradise,
Put up a parking lot.
Do you accept that you were a pioneer?
Oh, yeah. Sure. Oh, I blazed a lot of trails. Self-publishing, a lot.
And a lot of that as a woman, but you don't like to be called a feminist, correct?
No, I'm not a feminist.
And where's that line for you?
I don't want to get a posse against men. I'd rather go toe-to-toe myself. Work it out.
Before I let you go
Yeah.
and finally be rid of me. Let me ask you a bit about where you are now, where you're at now. You have a milestone birthday this year, turning 70. How do you feel about aging?
Oh, I'm fine with it as long as I can be healthy. I don't mind the aging. It's hard to tell at this age what is age decline and what is the disease. You know, I'm always asking my doctor, you know, do old people do this? Is that the disease or is that, you know, in other words, can I fight it or do I have to accept it? What can I fight and what can I accept? So that's my battle at this time is, you know, just trying to enter into old age, which is a decline of certain things, but also there's a liberty to it, which I feel it is kind of like second childhood, only not that you're childish necessarily. It's just that I saw a monarch butterfly go by the other day. Well, I'm always kind of thrilled by little things like that anyway. I've never lost that wonder and delight at things like that.
Are you someone who's preoccupied by mortality?
By immortality?
By mortality.
Oh, God, no. I mean, I've faced death so many times. No. No,
Doesn't freak you
Salvador
out.
Dali was. You know, that's what he was doing, all that commercial stuff, to be hibernated. No. No, I'm very good with death. I mean, all my animals have died, some of them in my arms. Birds have died in my, started with birds. I was introduced to death. A bird came to me to die that was mauled by a cat, and then another bird that hit the spray came
What
to me
about
to
your own
die.
mortality? When you say you face
I don't want to die yet.
Are you freaked out by it?
No. I just don't, I want more time. It's as simple as that. So, I'm trying to, I don't want to go yet. I've got a lot of things still that I want to accomplish and savor,
And I would still be on my feet. Oh, I'd still be on my feet.
This has been such a pleasure. Before we end this, I have to ask you, we've talked so much about all of what you've done throughout your career, or a lot of what you've done throughout your career, your tremendous creativity, the tremendous success you've had as defined by yourself and as defined by others, your fans, critics, etc. What are you most proud of, Joni? What do you look back and go, that is what I'm really proud of?
Well, there isn't anything singular, There's healthy pride and unhealthy pride. I try not to indulge too much in pride, but, there are cases, man, in the street where people come up that it's really meant a lot to them. Like, for instance, what first comes to mind here is 2 young girls who lost their mother in their early teens who holed up in their bedroom with this music. And it was cathartic, and I kind of surrogate mothered them, And there are people like, where did I read? The woman that plays in The Sopranos.
Edie Falco.
The bosses, she said
She
that
loves you.
that I raised her. So there are these strange things out there. Well, there is experiential exchange in the work, that to a young person, I think is valuable. There's one thing that I've been trying to bring across to people, I think, is you're on your own, let's face it. And that's okay. And that's kind of Nietzsche, that's what Nietzsche's Überman was all about. It's kind of a different approach to a similar idea, to remove the crutches.
It's a little scary.
It is for most people. For me, it just kind of happened. I didn't have anybody guiding me. They just removed themselves because I've had a very interesting and a very challenging life, Like I say, like a lot of battles, just disease after disease after. I mean, I shouldn't be here, But I have a tremendous will to live, and a tremendous joie de vivre, alternating, with irritability. Yeah.
Joni Mitchell, thank you. Thank you for inviting us into your home.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you for taking the time. It's been an absolute joy.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank
Nice to
you.
meet you.